The Last Great Adventure. Chapter 1. The Plan. Listen, I know what you're thinking. Two old coots breaking out of a nursing home. Sounds like the setup to a bad joke. What do you call two geriatrics in a getaway car? I don't know either, but I'm living it. I'm Harold Peterson, 83 years old, former Army Sergeant, current resident of Meadowbrook Senior Living. And as of 647 this morning, fugitive. My partner in crime is Thomas Brennan, 81, retired high school English teacher, grammar pedant, and the only person in this godforsaken place who doesn't treat me like I'm made of tissue paper and regret. Harold, are you certain about this? Thomas whispered as we shuffled past the nurse's station. His voice had that quaver it gets when he's nervous, like when Margaret Finley asks him to dance at the monthly social. Tommy, we've been over this. My nephew Danny left his car keys on the visitor desk. The morning shift doesn't start until 7. We've got a 13-minute window. You left a note? On my pillow. Very dramatic. And you're sure the car will start? It's a 1987 Buick LeSabre. Those things run on spite and motor oil. We made it to the parking lot without incident. Well, without major incident. Thomas's walker squeaked something awful until I WD-40'd it in the supply closet. And I nearly threw my back out opening the fire exit, but we were free. The Buick sat in the far corner, powder blue and glorious, like a mechanical whale in a sea of sensible sedans. I held up the keys like Excalibur. Thomas, my friend, we are going on a road trip. Chapter 2. The First 100 Miles. The car started on the second try, which I took as a good sign from the universe. Thomas fumbled with his seatbelt. These newfangled contraptions, even from 1987, gave him trouble. While I adjusted the rearview mirror and caught sight of Meadowbrook disappearing behind us. We're really doing this, Thomas said, and I couldn't tell if it was a question or a statement. We really are. They'll be worried. They'll be fine. We left notes. We're adults. We're wards of the state. Technicalities. The morning was crisp, the kind of October day that makes you remember there's a world beyond cafeteria meatloaf and scheduled nap times. We took Route 33 out of Columbus, heading west, and for the first 20 miles neither of us said much. We just drove, windows down, radio playing something that might have been country or might have been static. So, Thomas finally said, "Are you going to tell me why we're doing this?" I'd been dreading that question. Not because I didn't have an answer, but because the answer made me sound like a sentimental old fool. We're going to New Mexico. Yes, you mentioned that in your cryptic 3 a.m. wake-up call. You said it was important. It is. Harold. The thing about Thomas is that he was a teacher for 40 years. He's got this way of saying your name that makes you feel like you forgot your homework and your excuses won't cut it. Remember I told you about Jimmy Kowalski? Thomas was quiet for a moment. Your friend from the war. Best friend. We enlisted together, shipped out together, survived 2 tours together. After we came home, we made a pact. Said we'd take a road trip to Santa Fe, like something out of Easy Rider. Drink too much, stay up too late, see the desert sunrise. What happened? Life happened. I got married, had kids, got a job at the post office. Jimmy went to college on the GI Bill, became an accountant. We kept saying next year and then maybe in a few years, and then suddenly it was 40 years later, and Jimmy had a heart attack in his driveway while taking out the trash. I could feel Thomas looking at me, but I kept my eyes on the road. I went to his funeral. I continued. His daughter showed me this shoebox he kept on his closet shelf. Inside was a map of Route 66, a list of diners we talked about visiting, and a photo of the two of us in Saigon, young and stupid and convinced we'd live forever. Harold, I'm not finished. At the bottom of the box was a note. Just one line. Tell Harold I waited. That was 15 years ago, Tommy. 15 years I've been carrying that around. The highway stretched ahead, grey and endless. An 18-wheeler rumbled past, and the Buick shook like a wet dog. So we're going for Jimmy? Thomas said softly. We're going for Jimmy. And for every time I said later when I meant never. Thomas nodded, adjusted his bifocals, and turned up the radio. Merle Haggard was singing about Mama's hungry eyes. Well then, he said, we'd better stop for coffee. It's a long way to New Mexico. Chapter 3. Detour in Indiana. We made it to the Indiana border before the check engine light came on. Is that bad? Thomas asked, pointing at the glowing amber symbol on the dashboard. It's been on since we left Ohio. Then why are you pulling over? Because now it's blinking. I guided the Buick into a truck stop that advertised best pie in the Midwest and clean restrooms, like those were equivalent achievements. The parking lot was half full of semis and road-weary family vehicles. Wait here, I told Thomas. I'll check under the hood. Do you know anything about engines? I know which end the gas goes in. Comforting. I popped the hood and stared at the mess of metal and hoses underneath. In Vietnam, I could field strip an M16 in under a minute. This was somehow more intimidating. Need help? I turned to find a woman in coveralls approaching, wiping her hands on a rag. She was maybe 40, with dark hair pulled back, and the kind of confident expression that made me immediately trust her. Car trouble? She asked. Check engine lights having a seizure. She peered under the hood, poked a few things, then straightened up. Your coolant's low. Really low. You got a leak somewhere, probably the radiator hose. When's the last time this thing was serviced? Define serviced. She laughed. I can patch the hose temporarily, top off your fluids. Should get you where you're going, assuming you're not going to Alaska. New Mexico. Should make it. Might want to get it properly fixed in Kansas City, though. While she worked, Thomas emerged from the car, stretching his legs and grimacing. His knees hadn't been the same since he'd fallen on the Meadowbrook ice rink. Because yes, they have an ice rink. And yes, someone thought it was a good idea to encourage octogenarians to skate. Everything all right? He asked. Just a small mechanical setback. This nice lady is saving our bacon. The woman. Her name tag said Marie. Glanced between us. You two running away from something? Running toward. I corrected. My mistake. She smiled. Where you headed in New Mexico? Santa Fe. Thomas said. Harold's fulfilling a promise to an old friend. 50 years late. I added. Marie secured the hose clamp and closed the hood. Better late than never, I suppose. That'll be $40 for the parts and labor. I pulled out my wallet, the one I'd loaded with the cash I'd been hoarding from birthday cards and the occasional poker game with Bill Martinez. Thomas had contributed his Social Security check. We had maybe $800 between us, which seemed like plenty until you factored in gas, food, and the inevitable disasters that plague road trips. Keep your money, Marie said, waving me off. My dad was in Vietnam. Army, like you. She'd noticed the old service tattoo on my forearm, faded but still visible. Never got to take his big trip either. Died when I was 12. Marie, just promise me you'll make it to Santa Fe. I shook her hand, and her grip was strong and sure. We'll make it. Chapter 4. The Call. We were somewhere in Illinois, having just demolished a truly heroic quantity of bacon and eggs at a diner called Mabel's, when Thomas's phone rang. I say phone loosely. It was one of those oversized senior citizen models with buttons the size of postage stamps and a font that could be read from space. His daughter Sarah had insisted he carry it. Don't answer it, I said. It's Sarah. Which is why you shouldn't answer it. But Thomas, bless his rule-following heart, answered it anyway. I watched his face cycle through several expressions. Guilty, apologetic, stubborn, and finally something like determination. Yes, Sarah, I know. Yes, they called you. No, we're not lost. We're in Illinois. Sarah, please listen. I understand you're concerned, but... Sarah, he held the phone away from his ear, and even I could hear the tinny sound of his daughter's voice, rapid fire and increasingly shrill. Give it here, I said, grabbing the phone. Hello, Sarah. Harold Peterson speaking. Mr. Peterson. What on earth do you think you're doing? My father has medications. He has appointments. He can't just. With all due respect, Mom, your father is 81 years old. He can do whatever he damn well pleases. Silence. Then. You've kidnapped my father. I've liberated your father. There's a difference. I'm calling the police. The police have better things to do than chase two old men who want to see New Mexico. We left notes. We're of sound mind. We're not hurting anybody. My father is diabetic. I looked at Thomas, who nodded and patted his jacket pocket where he kept his insulin and testing kit. He's got his medication, I said. We're being careful. We'll call you from every stop. But Sarah, please. Let him have this. Another silence, longer this time. I could almost hear her internal struggle, the mom worry battling with something else, something that maybe remembered what it was like to want an adventure. 1 week. She finally said. You have 1 week, and then you turn around and come home. And if anything happens to my father, then you have my full permission to kill me yourself. Deal. She hung up. Thomas stared at me. You just negotiated with my daughter. Somebody had to. You were losing. She's very protective. She's very terrifying. You raised a formidable woman, Tommy. He smiled then, small and pleased. I suppose I did. Chapter 5. Missouri Confessions. We crossed into Missouri as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink that reminded me why people write songs about the heartland. Thomas was driving. We'd switched off in St. Louis. And I was nominally navigating, though the map kept trying to fold itself into a paper crane. Can I ask you something? Thomas said suddenly. Shoot. Why'd you pick me? For this trip, I mean. We've only known each other 3 years. It was a fair question. Meadowbrook had plenty of residents, some I'd known longer. But from the first day Thomas arrived, shuffling in with his boxes of books, and that lost look people get when they realize they're in the last place they'll ever live, I'd recognized something. You reminded me of Jimmy, I said. The way you'd quote books like they were scripture. Jimmy used to do that, except with song lyrics. Used to drive me nuts during patrols. We'd be in the jungle, scared shitless, and he'd start singing Bob Dylan. Jimmy sounds like he was quite something. He was a pain in my ass, and I loved him like a brother. I finally got the map under control. But also, that first week you were at Meadowbrook, you asked me what I'd done before I retired. And when I said post office, you didn't leave it there. You asked what I'd wanted to be. What had you wanted to be? A forest ranger. Wanted to live in the mountains, far from people, surrounded by trees and quiet. Instead, I spent 40 years delivering mail in Columbus, Ohio. Thomas was quiet for a mile, maybe 2. Then. I wanted to write novels. The great American novel, naturally. I was going to be the next Steinbeck. What happened? I needed a job with benefits. Nancy was pregnant with Sarah, and teaching paid reliably. I told myself I'd write on weekends, during summer breaks. I've got 17 notebooks full of first chapters and abandoned plots. Did Nancy know about the notebooks? She found them after she died. Sarah did, when she was cleaning out the house. She asked me why I'd never finished anything. He laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. I told her I'd run out of time. But that wasn't true. I'd run out of courage. We drove through a small town, all closed shops and flickering streetlights. Somewhere a dog barked. Is that what this trip is? I asked. Finding courage? Maybe. Or maybe it's just proving we still can. That we're not done yet. We're not done yet. I agreed. Even if we're mostly made of replacement parts and regret. Especially then. Chapter 6. Kansas Breakdown. The Buick gave up the ghost just outside of Topeka. One minute we were cruising along, singing badly to Sweet Home Alabama. Neither of us was from Alabama, but that's beside the point. And the next, the engine made us sound like a cat being stepped on, and we coasted to a stop on the shoulder. Well, Thomas said, surveying the steam rising from under the hood. This seems suboptimal. Marie said we'd make it to Kansas City. We're not in Kansas City. Close enough. Harold, we're 60 miles away. That's not close enough in any meaningful sense of the word close. I got out to inspect the damage. The radiator hose had given up entirely, and from the smell, we'd blown something important. The Buick wasn't going anywhere without a tow truck and a miracle. Now what? Thomas asked, joining me. Now we improvise. I pulled out my phone. Same oversized model as Thomas's, because our families had apparently compared notes and decided we both needed the senior citizen special. And called AAA. Yes, I had AAA. You don't survive 83 years without learning to plan for disaster. The dispatcher said they'd send someone within the hour. We settled in to wait, sitting on the hood of the car as traffic whooshed past. You know what I regret most? Thomas said after a while. What's that? Never telling Nancy I was scared. The whole marriage, I played the role of the stable provider, the rock. But I was terrified all the time. Terrified I wasn't good enough, wasn't making enough money, wasn't being a good enough father. I thought showing fear meant I'd failed somehow. Did you ever think she might have been scared too? He looked at me, surprised. I suppose I never did. My wife Ellen, God rest her, told me 2 days before she died that she'd always known I was holding something back. Some part of myself I wouldn't share. She said it was like living with a locked room in the house. You knew it was there, but you could never go inside. I picked at a rust spot on the hood. She was right. I never told her about the war, about what I'd seen, what I'd done. Thought I was protecting her. Really, I was just protecting myself. Do you think we're cowards? I think we're human. Which sometimes amounts to the same thing. The tow truck arrived 47 minutes later, driven by a kid who couldn't have been more than 20. He took one look at the Buick and whistled. She's seen better days. Haven't we all? I muttered. He towed us to a garage in Topeka where a mechanic named Rick gave us the bad news. The engine needed work that would take at least 2 days and cost more than the car was worth. So we're stranded, Thomas said. Rick scratched his beard. Well, I've got a solution. My brother-in-law's got a used car lot across town. I could tow you over there, you could see if anything on his lot fits your budget. An hour later, We were the proud owners of a 2003 Honda Accord with 180,000 miles on it, and a mysterious rattling sound that Rick assured us was probably nothing serious. "We just bought a car," Thomas said as we drove off the lot. "We just bought a very used car. With money we need for the rest of the trip." Details. But he was grinning, and so was I, because we were still moving forward, still heading west, still not done yet. Chapter 7. Colorado Sunrise. We hit Colorado as the sun came up, and I'm not ashamed to say I got a little emotional. The mountains rose ahead of us, purple and gold in the early light, and for a moment I was 23 again, sitting in a Saigon bar with Jimmy, planning this exact trip. "We'll see the Rockies," Jimmy had said, already halfway to drunk. "We'll drive until we run out of road. And then what? Then we'll find more road." Thomas pulled over at a scenic overlook, and we got out to stretch. My back cracked in 3 places, and my knees protested the altitude, but I'd never felt more alive. "It's beautiful," Thomas said. "Jimmy would have loved this." "Tell me about him. Really tell me, I mean. Not just the sanitized version." So I did. I told him about Jimmy's terrible jokes, his worst cooking, the time he tried to befriend a water buffalo and nearly got us both killed. I told him about the night Jimmy saved my life, dragging me out of an ambush when I'd been hit. I told him about the letters he sent after the war, always ending with "We'll take that trip soon, Harry. Real soon." "He sounds like he was a good man," Thomas said when I finished. "The best. I had a friend like that. Peter Chen. We taught together for 20 years. He wanted to move to Portland, open a bookstore. I told him I'd invest, be his partner. We made all these plans." Thomas's voice got quiet. "Then he died of cancer. 63 years old. I went to the funeral and his widow gave me this." He pulled out a small bookmark from his wallet. On it, in faded ink, were the words, "Thomas Brennan, co-owner, chapter and verse books." He'd already made the sign, Thomas continued. Had it printed up, ready to hang. And I never knew. I'd been dragging my feet, making excuses, and he'd been waiting for me to say yes. We stood there for a long time, 2 old men at a Colorado overlook, carrying our dead friends with us. "We're going to make it to Santa Fe," I said finally. "For Jimmy and Peter both." "For Jimmy and Peter," Thomas agreed. Chapter 8. The Pueblo Incident. We should have kept driving straight to New Mexico. We were so close. Just a few hours away from Santa Fe. But we needed gas, and the Honda was making that rattling sound again, and there was a sign for Pueblo that advertised historic downtown and famous chili. "Quick stop," I said. "Stretch our legs, get some food." Famous last words. The chili place was called Rose's, and it was packed with locals who eyed us with the polite suspicion small towns reserve for obvious tourists. We found a booth in the back, and ordered 2 bowls of red chili that the waitress promised would wake up your taste buds and possibly your ancestors. She wasn't wrong. The chili was volcanic. "This is delicious," Thomas gasped, tears streaming down his face. "This is a salt," I counted, gulping water. We were halfway through our meal when a woman approached our table. She was maybe 70, with silver hair and sharp eyes that suggested she didn't miss much. "You 2 aren't from around here," she said. It wasn't a question. "Just passing through," I said. "Heading to Santa Fe. Running from something or toward something?" "Toward," Thomas said. "Definitely toward." She smiled then, and it transformed her face. "I'm Elena. Mind if I sit?" Before we could answer, She'd slid into the booth next to Thomas. I used to run this place with my husband. He died last year. Heart attack, right there behind the counter. Dropped dead while making enchiladas. I'm sorry, Thomas said. Don't be. He died doing what he loved, which is more than most people get. She flagged down the waitress and ordered coffee. The thing is, we always talked about selling the restaurant and traveling. Europe, South America, anywhere but Pueblo. But we kept saying next year and then maybe after tourist season, and then he was gone. So you're stuck here? I said. I was stuck here. Past tense. She leaned forward conspiratorially. I sold the place last month. Closing is in 2 weeks. Soon as the papers are signed, I'm getting on a plane to Spain. Good for you, Thomas said, and meant it. The reason I'm telling you this. Elena pulled out a photograph from her purse. It showed a much younger version of herself with a handsome man, both of them laughing in front of what looked like the Grand Canyon. This is the only trip we ever took. One weekend, 30 years ago. I've been living on this memory for 3 decades. She looked at us, really looked at us. Don't wait, gentlemen. Whatever you're doing, whoever you're doing it for, don't wait. The world doesn't pause for our plans. After she left, Thomas and I sat in silence, finishing our chili despite the pain. We're not waiting anymore, he finally said. No, I agreed. We're not. Chapter 9. Santa Fe at last. We rolled into Santa Fe at sunset, and it was everything Jimmy had promised and nothing like I'd imagined. The city glowed amber and rust in the fading light, adobe buildings stacked like children's blocks against the mountains. The air smelled of pinon smoke and possibility. Where to? Thomas asked. I pulled out the map Jimmy had made, all those years ago. He'd marked a spot on the east side of town. Sunrise Point. Best view in New Mexico. There, I said, pointing. We found it after 3 wrong turns and asking directions from a teenager who looked at us like we'd emerged from a time capsule. The spot was exactly as Jimmy had described. A small overlook with a weathered bench, facing the Sangre de Cristo Mountains. I sat on the bench. Thomas sat beside me. The sky turned purple, then navy, then black, and the stars came out. More stars than I'd seen since Vietnam, more stars than I'd remembered existed. We made it, Thomas said softly. We made it. I thought about Jimmy, young and full of plans. I thought about Peter Chen, printing signs for a bookstore that would never exist. I thought about all the things I'd meant to do, meant to say, meant to be. And then I thought about Marie at the truck stop, fixing our car with capable hands. Elena in Pueblo finally booking her ticket to Spain. Thomas beside me, who'd driven across the country with a near stranger, because we both understood that waiting was just another word for giving up. Harold, Thomas said. What happens now? Now. I pulled out my phone and took a picture of the stars. Now we find a hotel. Tomorrow we'll see the city, eat too much, maybe visit a museum. And then we'll drive back to Ohio, and we'll let Sarah and Bill and everyone else lecture us about responsibility and risk. And it'll have been worth it. I looked at my friend. Because that's what he'd become somewhere between Ohio and here. Somewhere between confessions and breakdowns and that terrible chili in Pueblo. Tommy, it already is. Chapter 10. The Long Way Home. We stayed in Santa Fe for 3 days. We visited the plaza, where artists sold jewelry and pottery. We ate at a restaurant where the chili was somehow both green and red on the same plate. We went to the Georgia O'Keeffe Museum, and Thomas stood in front of her paintings of skulls and flowers for so long I thought he'd taken root. She understood, he said finally. Understood what? That beauty and death aren't opposites. They're dance partners. On our last morning, I woke up early and walked back to Sunrise Point alone. I brought the photo of Jimmy and me, the one that had lived in that shoe box for 15 years. We made it, buddy. I said to the picture, to the mountains, to the memory of a friend who'd waited. Took me long enough, but we made it. I don't believe in ghosts or spirits or any of that. But I swear I felt something shift right then, some weight I'd been carrying finally set down. The drive back took 5 days. We took our time, stopping at roadside attractions and diners with names like Big Earl's and the Hungry Fork. We bought postcards and souvenirs we didn't need. We called our families every night, assuring them we were fine, we'd be home soon, yes, we were wearing our seatbelts. In Kansas City, we stopped at the garage where Rick had sold us the Honda. He seemed surprised to see us. "You boys made it back. Did you think we wouldn't?" "Honestly? Little bit." He grinned. "How'd she run?" "Like a dream with a rattle," Thomas said. "Somewhere in Illinois. We passed the diner where we'd eaten breakfast on day one. The same waitress was working, and she remembered us." "You two actually made it to New Mexico?" "We actually did," I confirmed. "Well, I'll be damned. Coffee's on the house." By the time we crossed back into Ohio, we were tired, broke, and the Honda's rattle had evolved into a full-blown cough. But we were also something else, something harder to name. "Do you think we're different?" Thomas asked as Meadowbrook came into view. "I think we're the same people who left," I said. "Just more so." Epilogue. After. They threw us a party. I'm not kidding. We pulled into the Meadowbrook parking lot expecting lectures and maybe legal consequences. And instead found a banner reading, "Welcome home Harold and Thomas," and what appeared to be the entire resident population waiting to cheer. Susan Palmer was there, looking equal parts relieved and exasperated. Sarah had flown in from Boston, and she hugged Thomas so hard I thought she might crack his ribs. Even Bill Martinez was grinning, holding up a newspaper with the headline, "Local Seniors Stage Great Escape." "You made the news," Bill said, shoving the paper at me. "You're famous." "We're infamous," I corrected. "Same difference at our age." The party lasted until the nurses made everyone go to bed. People wanted to hear stories, see photos, touch the proof that two old men could still do something unexpected. Ethel Rodriguez cornered Thomas and made him promise to write everything down. "People need to know," she insisted. "People need to know it's never too late." That night, after everything calmed down, I sat in my room and looked at the photos on my phone. Santa Fe at sunset. Thomas laughing at some dumb joke I'd made. The mountains, endless and patient. My roommate Bill leaned against the doorframe. "Was it everything you hoped?" "It was better," I said. "It was real." "Think you'll do it again?" I thought about the open road. About Elena flying to Spain. About Marie fixing radiator hoses at truck stops. About all the people who were still waiting for permission to start living. "Maybe," I said. "But next time, we're taking someone with us. This place is full of people with nowhere to go." Harold Peterson, "Are you starting a revolution?" "I'm starting a field trip." "There's a difference." But Bill was grinning, and I could see him already making plans, already thinking about where he'd go if someone gave him the chance. Thomas knocked on my door an hour later. He was holding something. A notebook, leather-bound and new. "I'm going to write it," he said. "Our trip. Everything that happened. For Peter and for Jimmy, and for anyone else who needs to know it's not too late." "What are you going to call it?" He smiled. "The Long Way Home." "Perfect. He started to leave, then turned back. Harold. Thank you. For dragging me out of here, for refusing to let me make excuses, for everything. Thank you for coming along. For being brave when I wasn't sure I could be. After he left, I pulled out the photo of Jimmy one more time. We were so young in that picture, so certain we had all the time in the world. We made it, brother, I whispered. It wasn't the trip we planned, and it was 50 years too late, but we made it. And I swear, in the quiet of that nursing home room, with the sounds of snoring and late-night TV filtering through the walls, I could almost hear Jimmy laughing, telling me it was about damn time. 3 months later, Thomas's book was finished. He printed copies for everyone at Meadowbrook, and Sarah helped him publish it online. It became a minor sensation. Nothing huge, but enough that newspapers interviewed us and a producer called about movie rights. But the best part came when letters started arriving. From other nursing homes, from families, from people who'd been waiting their whole lives for permission to stop waiting. One letter came from a woman in Oregon. My father is 87 and has always wanted to see the Grand Canyon. Because of your story, we're taking him next month. Another from a man in Florida. My mother sold her house and moved to Paris. She's 82. Says she's got 2 good decades left and plans to use them. They kept coming, these stories of people finally moving, finally doing, finally living. Thomas framed his favorite letter and hung it in his room. It was from a teenager. My grandpa showed me your book. He's been saying he's too old to learn guitar. After reading about you guys, he bought one. He's terrible, but he's happy. Thanks for showing him it's never too late. On what would have been Jimmy's 84th birthday, I went back to Sunrise Point. Thomas came with me, along with Bill Martinez and Ethel Rodriguez and 6 other Meadowbrook residents who decided they wanted their own adventure. We rented a van. Legally this time. And drove to Santa Fe, and I told them all about Jimmy, about waiting, about the difference between living and just not dying yet. And when the sun came up over the Sangre de Cristo Mountains, painting the world in colors that don't have names, I finally understood what Jimmy had known all along. The trip isn't about the destination. It's about refusing to let fear and age and what if steal the time you have left. It's about throwing off the bowlines and sailing away from the safe harbor. It's about the long way home.